Hello, my friends. Welcome back to our nuggets for today. In our study today, we'll be talking about a conditional relationship. When I hear the word conditional, I automatically think back to grammar lessons at school. Now, let me refresh your memory. In a conditional sentence, there are two clauses, an if clause and a main clause. Usually, a conditional clause is introduced with the words if or unless, and then a result. So, for example, many people think, if I was rich, then I'd be happy. Or another example, you can't go out tonight unless you finish your homework. So you get the point. There's a condition to be met in order for something to happen. Now, how about relationships? Are there conditionals in relationships? And more importantly, is that a good thing? As a marriage therapist, I often hear couples say things like, why do I have to change if he or she doesn't change? In other words, they're saying, if the other person changes first, then I'll change. You can imagine how that turns out. Let's turn now to conditionals in the Bible and in our relationship to God. Jesus said to his disciples, if you love me, keep my commandments. Earlier this week, we learned that God's love is everlasting, and no matter how despicable you may be, God doesn't stop loving you. But in some of the Bible texts we read in today's study, such as Hosea 9 verse 15 or Jeremiah 16 verse 5, God says to the people of Israel, and I quote, I hated them there. I will no longer love them. Or, I have withdrawn my blessing, my love and my pity from this people. Is God contradicting himself? No, that's not the case. Here's the situation. Our sin provokes hatred in God because he detests sin, and the judgments or consequences of that sin has to be carried out. We know that one day sin will be eradicated forever. Now, we also know that God hates sin, but loves the sinner. But if the sinner refuses to detach themselves from their sin, they will have to reckon with the divine abhorrence of evil, which ultimately is the destruction of sin. But that will also include the sinner. Additionally, when you consider yourself God's follower, but you live in sin and don't care to remove yourself from that sin, you have more responsibility before God because you have been given spiritual light. You're not sinning out of ignorance. Therefore, greater is your condemnation. And that is what God is referring to when he says to Israel, I hated them there, I will no longer love them. The conditionality of God's love is not that he stops loving us, but that we stop responding to his light and love. The best way to describe it is if we see God as the source of light, like the sun. We can turn our backs on the sun, but that doesn't mean that the sun has stopped shining. We can stand under a cloud and believe that there is no sun, but the sun is still there. We can hide in the darkest room in the world or in the deepest cave. It doesn't mean the sun has stopped shining. We have removed ourselves from the sun's rays. You have to be in the sun's path in order to receive its warmth. Same thing with God's love. The condition is to stand in its path in order to receive it. And that is the end of our nugget for today. I'll see you tomorrow.